and welcome back to my channel. I'm Cherish and this is Shadows to Sunshine. I am here today with your Sunshine report. I am actually going to be making Play-Doh while I do this video, so you'll see me mixing. Just coming in, I know there's been a lot going on with retrograde spinning and this full moon energy, and typically I plan on doing the Shadow to Sunshine reports once a month, but if the spirit moves me, we're gonna do a little bit more. So today we're just gonna talk about some basic things. I know a lot of people aren't 100% familiar with shadow work, how it goes, and things like that. So I want to make sure we get into those things. So for me, my shadow work journey started when actually I turned 30 years old, so almost 6 years ago. It was a hellacious journey because I didn't understand that it was shadow work. I just knew that like there was a lot of things that I needed to work on because I just wasn't happy in life. I wasn't happy with the way things were going. And while yes, I do other things than just shadow work and readings and stuff like that, I also understand that not everybody's into those things like I am. So I want you guys to be able to feel like you can get what you need here. So when it comes to shadow work, the main place I started originally was just sorting out, like, I realized that I didn't have a lot of emotional control. My emotions are where I struggled the most at, and I couldn't figure out why certain things would trigger me, but in other areas it wouldn't bother me as much. But like I'd be losing my ish with certain things. Not to mention, like, I did kind of have, I won't say like I had a horrible childhood because that wasn't the case, but there was a lot of things that I needed in my childhood that I did not get, and I harbored a lot of resentment for those things. So I wanted to get past that point. I wanted to, you know, heal all those things. I was holding on to a lot of stuff and just couldn't figure out why. Hold on one second, I forgot water. Okay, I'm back. So in tackling those issues and trying to get to the root of the cause and what was making me feel those feelings, have such a hard time, you know, adapting and adjusting, like I had to sort out where most of those things stem from. Like I could identify like the triggers, but I could not identify why they were triggering me the way they did. So that meant even more work, you know? So a lot of people, when they come to me and they ask me, you know, how do I get my shadow work journey started? I've always started with one basic exercise, and it's been helpful, and I've had other people do it and they have seen great results with it as well. And I think it's a great space to start. So one of my very first things I did was letter writing. Now, I knew that the person I was writing the letter to would never see the letter. And so that meant I wasn't going to get a rebuttal and an explanation or an apology for those things that had been sitting with me for so long. But it allowed me to openly express them and really identify what it was I was feeling. Like the anger, the sadness, the hurt, the abandonment. Like it gave me room to address all those things. And so it was a very helpful exercise. So I typically start all of my clients off with just a basic letter writing, because you typically know at first who those feelings are directed at. Even if they are misdirected, you have a grasp. And sometimes during the letter writing process, you recognize like, wait, I'm mad at the wrong person. Or these feelings are directed at the top, like somebody who was just also a victim of circumstances, who did the best they could with their limited knowledge and limited resources. And then, you know, you have those people that are just plain out full of shit. Like, so with the letter, like I said, I began, and it was just getting out, like, you know, I'm upset because you weren't there when I needed you. Okay, well, when did I need you? Well, I needed you for this and you weren't there. Okay, and how did it make me feel that you weren't there in that time that I needed you? Oh, well, it made me feel like you didn't care and you didn't love me. And in doing my shadow work exercises and starting out with just, like I said, just basic letter writing, like just basically just getting it out of my head and onto paper, it gave me a great sense of relief. It allowed me the opportunity where it was not a confrontation. I could say whatever I wanted, and there was no judgment. It was a judgment-free zone. It was my space to exist in who I was and not feel like I owed anybody an explanation for it. Because the only person I was working to explain it to was myself. And this exercise is great, especially if one of the sources of your trauma is somebody who has already passed on to the other side, because you can't address them anyway. Like, dead men tell no tales. So it allowed that space of me, just like I said, saying what I needed to say, getting all that out of me and getting it out of my head, because a lot of times those thoughts have been carried on for years, for decades. And, you talk to your friends and your homies and it still doesn't do anything. I am a big advocate of therapy. I think it's a great tool, and I definitely believe that in the Afro community, we need to see more therapists that look like us, that can relate to some of our trauma and also relate to the lifestyle and the culture where this trauma has been allowed to exist for so long unchecked. So there's always been that aspect. So that's why I always preface with saying, like, shadow work is not a substitution if you need psychiatric help. It is not. Shadow work does not fix bipolar disorder or PTSD. It provides great tools to help you work through some of those things. But if you need to speak with someone, please do. There's nothing shameful about needing a little extra help, right? Because I think a lot of the people who inflicted trauma upon other people, if they had their resource and really looked into doing those things, then maybe hurt people wouldn't hurt people as much. And you can break that generational curse very easily by just being upfront about what is going on. Now, for me, I sat back and I realized, like, right around the new year, a lot of people that I hadn't had too much to say or cared about or thought about, if I'm being honest, because out of sight, out of mind as far as I'm concerned, started resurfacing. And they had grievances. Oh, they had grievances. And I noticed that in most of those grievances, just a little bit of self-reflective work, they would have seen that their problem is them, not me. But, everybody has their space and everybody heals in their own time. So I wanted to allow opportunities that I didn't get. Like, you got something to say? Let's talk about it. Making Play-Doh, making Play-Doh. Anyway, and in doing this, like, some of them did come to the realization that it had nothing to do with me. And sometimes we do that. We misdirect our anger because we don't want to address the feelings that we have inside of us, because we don't necessarily understand why we have said feelings and what's triggering it. And yes, I drink wine. I got mini bottles so I can get through this Play-Doh and not, be a slizzard mess. And that's part of where shadow work comes in. Shadow work comes in and looking in those deep parts of yourself and recognizing where you're fucking up. It requires a lot of self-awareness. And everybody starts their journey when it's necessary, if people start it at all, because some people don't, They're that this is how I am and this is the way I am. But shadow work dives into those deep subconscious areas, like those areas you don't think about, those things you think you're over and don't bother you. But in reality, like, they affect how you interact with other people. They affect how you receive messages from other people and communicate. And shadow work requires unlearning a lot. And you can imagine with how many people who don't like to learn, how difficult it is for them to unlearn certain habits and things. So it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of patience. And the biggest thing about shadow work is being patient with yourself. Because if you cannot be patient with yourself, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to want to quit. You're going to want to stop. And typically that's right at the point when you're on the edge of a breakthrough. When everything is like, oh, fuck this. I'm done with this. I don't want to do this. And that's when you realize, oh, wait, that's the lesson I needed to learn. That's where I needed to get through, because life is full of tests. Like, you're going to be tested all the time. Like I tell people when they're like, I want to be more patient. You do know things are going to come along to test that patience to see if you really managed to gain that patience. Like, it's not just, oh, I'm giving you patience because you want patience. It has to be tested. Then that means even more work and more triggers to see if you've gotten through it. And especially during shadow work, here's the biggest thing to remember. Healing is a slow process. It is not going to happen overnight. And expecting it to happen overnight is a recipe for disaster. You're setting yourself up for failure. And there's no point in setting yourself up for failure when you could just be patient. You didn't get the trauma overnight. You didn't build these habits overnight. You didn't learn these behaviors overnight. So expecting them to disappear overnight is unrealistic. And shadow work is about being realistic and being honest with yourself and really tapping into those things that you're like, why do I have to do this? I don't want to deal with this. It requires a lot of inner child work too, because a lot of issues stem from childhood. So you have to address those things and really dive into why you are the way you are and what makes you tick. Now, I'm not the most pleasant person to have a conversation with, because it's very hard for me to talk to somebody and I'm seeing like all their demons in me not to call them out. People who tend to project their own insecurities and bitch assness on other people, like I don't go easy on them. So I'm working on that, being more soft, if that makes sense. Because I'm not the softest person. Life has made me a little hard. It's made me a little cynical. And I can accept that. I mean, I also feel like I'm a realist, so there's that too. But, you know, different folks, different strokes. But be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Understand that it's going to take time. Don't rush the process. You're allowed to fail, then you are going to fail. And that's okay. Like, the world is not ending because you regressed today, or you had an outburst, or you were triggered today. Like, the world doesn't end. It's another opportunity for you to learn and grow. As long as you are consistently learning from those mistakes and actively working to change them. Shadow work requires accountability. It requires you to say that I know that I run my life, and I know that nobody's going to come in this house right now and whoop my ass if I make a decision to have dessert for dinner today. But it's also, I have a blood sugar of 600. Do I really need this dessert today? Thinking about things like that, being conscious of those and not making excuses for everything that happens in your life that doesn't go the way you want it to go. Like, 'cause that's not how this works. I will do my very best to keep the shadow work elements separate from the more metaphysical elements of my practices, so that way it's more diverse content. What I am not going to get on here and do is I'm not going to go over spells and rituals with you. Those are individual things, and depending on what you practice and what you believe. And they're also very intimate. Like, I feel extremely tied to my practice, and so I don't always want to share that with other people. And truthfully, because it's nobody's business. Like, it's nobody's business. What you do in your private practices are your private practices. your practice, your journey, your shadow work, all of that is not going to look like anybody else's, because your unique experience has been shaped by all of the events in your life. All of those things you learned, all of those things that were inflicted upon you have shaped who you are and your perceptions. So be mindful of that. Like if it seems like, oh, everybody's getting it and I'm not getting it. Okay. They got it. Good for them. You work for you to get it. Like, and that's all you can do. So I'm going to keep sitting up here. See, we made Play-Doh. How fun was that? So we will see what the future holds as we continue on this journey. And again, keep growing my sunflowers. And I'm so happy to have you in my garden. And I just can't wait for us to continue to grow together.